Tonight, we'll embark on a gentle journey through Viking mythology, where ancient legends and Norse adventures come to life. So for now, let's get cozy, breathe deeply, and set sail with the myths of the ancient Vikings, beyond the rugged fjords of old Scandinavia, where the northern lights dance across the velvet sky. A saga whispers through the pines. In this mystical realm, steeped in the twilight of legends, the tale of the Vikings begins. These warriors, these explorers, emerged from a land both harsh and breathtaking, destined to carve their names into the fabric of history. As night falls over the northern lands, the air hums with the echoes of ancient lore. Here, beneath the flickering glow of the hearth, stories unfold of fierce Norsemen, their longships slicing through icy waters, driven by a hunger for discovery and conquest. From the 9th to the 11th centuries, their voyages carried them far beyond familiar shores, from the frozen coasts of Greenland to the untamed wilds of North America. In the tales whispered through the winds of time, they are remembered as indomitable raiders, their spirits unyielding, their hearts alight with the fire of glory and the lure of riches. Their legacy, a tapestry of bravery and battle, exploration and endurance, is forever woven into the heart of the North. And in their wake, they left a mystery, a legacy that threads myth and history into a single, eternal saga. In the ancient whisper of the cosmos, when existence itself was still a shadow, two realms emerged from the silence. Niflheim, a domain cloaked in eternal fog, and Muspel, a land ablaze with unquenchable fire. Between them yawned Ginnunga Gap, a vast abyss, where the clash of frost and flame breathed the first stirrings of life. From this collision came Ymir, the first of the frost giants, a being born of chaos, immense and ageless. And so began the eternal struggle. From the mist of Niflheim and the fiery breath of Muspel came Oambla, the celestial cow, a creature of boundless nourishment. She fed Ymir, and from her came Buri, a deity of beginnings, father to the gods. Thus was born a divine lineage, a pantheon destined to shape all realms. And in the cradle of this turbulent cosmos unfolded the saga of Bor and his sons, Odin, Vili, and Vi. Together they rose against Ymir, the titan of frost. And from their titanic battle, a world was born. Ymir's flesh became the earth, his bones the mountains, his blood the seas. And so, from fire and frost, from shadow and silence, the Norse cosmos took form, an eternal saga, whispering still through the stars. From the bones of the earth, the dwarves arose, stalwart, patient, and tireless. They toiled beneath the sky, their hands shaping the world. From the remnants of Ymir, when his vast skull was lifted to form the heavens, 4 dwarves, Nori, Suri, Ostri, and Vestri, were placed at each corner of the sky to hold it firm. Ymir's luminous hair became the trees and bushes, while his mighty brow formed the fortified walls that enclosed Midgard, the realm of humankind. Yet even after his fall, one of the giants endured. Bergelmir, survivor of the cataclysm, fled to the edges of the cosmos, and there he forged Jotunheim, a new realm for giants, a living monument to the eternal cycle of creation and destruction. The gods, in their boundless labor of love, turned their gaze to the sky. From Ymir's shattered remains, they crafted the heavens. His brain, scattered across the void, drifted into brooding clouds. His fiery sparks, captured by the gods, blazed into stars, and the sun and moon, resplendent in golden chariots, were drawn by noble steeds, Arvakr and Alsver, riding their eternal path across the sky, guiding the rhythm of day and night. Thus, the great narrative of the world was born, a saga of celestial origin, echoing across the boundless expanse of time and space. In the early light of a world freshly shaped from chaos, Odin the All-Father, supreme among the gods, walked the newborn earth, with his companions, Honor and Loki, beneath the vast canopy of sky. Formed from Ymir's transformed essence, they marveled at the oceans, at the heavens, and at their own divine handiwork. But a deep stillness lingered, a silence waiting to be broken, an emptiness yearning for breath. Along the ocean's edge, where the waves whispered secrets to the shore, the gods discovered two pieces of driftwood, simple gifts of the sea. Shaped by time, tide, and fate, a divine spark flickered. Honor stepped forward first, casting his shadow upon one piece, shaping the outline of humanity. Then Loki, with his sly charm, breathed movement and color into the other, animating it in the glow of the golden sun. Finally, Odin approached. His breath carried the essence of divinity. As it touched the driftwood, the rough bark receded, revealing a woman, still, serene, and radiant with potential. Turning to the second form, Odin exhaled once more. The wood fell away, and a man emerged, strong, steady, and poised to awaken. With Odin's gift, they took their first breath. Loki, now infused with delight, granted the woman the vibrancy of youth, the sharpness of sight, and the fullness of feeling. Her eyes lit with wonder. He then turned to the man, bestowing the same senses, the richness of life, the depth of perception, and Honor, completing their creation, gave them speech, the sacred gift that would echo through the ages. Together, hand in hand, they stepped forward into the unknown world, the very first humans. Odin, in his deep and thunderous voice, named them Ash and Elm, a tribute to their origin from driftwood. Shaped by divine hands, he draped his cloak across Elm's shoulders, a symbol of protection and care, entrusting her to Ash, not as a possession, but as a partner in the journey of life. And so began the human story, born from tree and tide, and sealed with the breath of the gods. Guardianship, a sacred bond the Vikings believed to be eternal. Spanning the river of time, and above the clouds, in a realm of unparalleled peace and splendor, stood Asgard, the enclosure of the gods, ruled by Odin, the All-Father, from his golden throne upon Hliskjolf. He watched over Midgard, the world of men. At the heart of Asgard, the palace Gladsheim rose in radiant glory, its golden halls housing the thrones of the 12 principal gods. Nearby, Vingolf stood, a gleaming sanctuary for the goddesses, reflecting Asgard's golden age. Here, divine laws were spoken, harmony was kept, and in sacred forges, the tools of power were crafted, weapons for gods, instruments of destiny. Stretching from Asgard to Midgard, arched Bifrost, the rainbow bridge, a dazzling arc of fire and light, shimmering with all the hues of the cosmos. The lands of the gods were breathtaking. Rolling hills, sparkling gems, palaces of gold and silver. This was the domain of the Aesir, noble gods of spirit and strength. But they were not alone. From Vanaheim, the Vanir came, gods of fertility, nature, and foresight. Though once divided by war, Peace was forged through the sacred exchange of hostages. From that sacrifice grew unity, a divine harmony between two mighty houses. And above it all, soared Yggdrasil, the world tree, the eternal ash that binds the 9 realms together. Its vast branches embrace all existence. Its immense roots delve into realms of mystery and power. At Yggdrasil's base, the 3 Norns, Urd, Verdandi, and Skuld, tended the fate of gods and men, drawing water from 3 sacred wells. They shaped destiny with each thread they spun. One root reached into Asgard, nourished by Urebrannr, the well of fate. Another stretched to Jotunheim, the realm of the frost giants, drawing wisdom from Mimisbrannr, the well of Mimir. There, the severed head of Mimir, kept alive by herbs and enchantment, whispered truths older than time. The third root plunged into Niflheim, near the shadowy spring of Hvergelmir, where decay fills the air. And there, Nidhogr, the terrible dragon, gnawed relentlessly at Yggdrasil's root, a threat that would fell any lesser tree. But Yggdrasil stood firm, timeless, enduring. Its branches whispered across realms. Its bark bore the scars of prophecy and sacrifice. For from this tree, Odin sought the runes, ancient symbols of wisdom and power. In his relentless quest for knowledge, the Allfather performed the greatest sacrifice. He hung himself from Yggdrasil's mighty bough, a god suspended between life and death. For 9 days and 9 nights, he endured pain beyond mortal reckoning. No food, no drink, only agony, and the relentless pull of the unknown. And then, the runes revealed themselves, their secrets unfurled before him, their power etched into his soul. With that knowledge, Odin became more than king. He became seer, warrior, sorcerer, the sovereign of wisdom across all 9 realms. From the heights of Asgard to the depths of Hell, his voice carried the weight of the cosmos. The realms themselves are many. Vanaheim, land of the Vanir; Midgard, the world of men; Alfheim and Svartalfheim, homes of the light and dark elves; Jotunheim, domain of the frost and hill giants; Muspelheim, realm of fire; Niflheim, realm of ice and shadow; Hell, the netherworld; and above all, Asgard, where our story unfolds. In this divine kingdom, where time stands still, and youth lingers forever, Odin reigned supreme. He was known as the Allfather, for he was the father of both gods and men. From his high throne, he watched over all, and when the desire stirred in him, he would leave his heavenly seat, disguise himself, and walk among gods and among mortals. Odin, ever seeking to understand the ways of the world, often wandered the realms in many forms. Though cloaked in mystery, he was often recognized, for he bore only one eye, an eye that saw all. His throne in Asgard stood not merely as a symbol of dominion, but as a sacred vantage, from which he watched both the mortal world and the divine. Unlike the brawny warriors of legend, Odin's strength was rooted in wisdom. Upon his shoulders perched 2 ravens, Hugin, the spirit of thought, and Munin, the essence of memory. They flew far each day, whispering the secrets of the world back into his ear. In his hand he held Gungnir, a spear of unbreakable will, forged by the dwarfs. Upon his finger, he wore a ring that echoed the eternal cycle of life. At his feet rested 2 great wolves, Jerry and Freki, guardians of his throne and companions in the hunt. Odin walked the line between worlds. On the battlefield, he appeared as an old man, mysterious, cloaked, trailing behind him ravens and wolves. and accompanied by the Valkyries, choosers of the slain, who guided fallen warriors to the halls of Valhalla. Valhalla, Odin's radiant palace in Asgard. With 500 doors, each wide enough for armies to pass. Its shimmering walls gleamed with polished spears, and its golden roof blazed like the sun. Here, warriors favored by Odin feasted endlessly, their wounds healing with each dawn, their strength tested in glorious combat. Beside Odin stood Frigg, the revered Allmother, his wife, his equal, weaving fate with her silent, ethereal grace, and Freya, goddess of love and atmosphere, nurturing as nature itself, beloved by both gods and mortals. Together, Odin and Frigg raised their children. There was Thor, the god of thunder, boisterous and bold, his fiery hair as wild as the storms he commanded. There was Baldur, the fairest and kindest of all, a shining light among the gods. Hr, his blind brother, found joy in simplicity, while Tyr, brave and relentless, traveled far and wide as the god of war. Heimdall, the vigilant sentinel, guarded Bifrost, the rainbow bridge. His ears heard even the faintest sound. His eyes saw farther than any god. But even in this golden realm, secrets brewed. Among the gods lived Loki, a trickster, a shapeshifter, a rogue. Some called him brother to Odin, others called him curse. His eyes burned with mischief of the most dangerous kind, though handsome in form. His soul was twisted in shadow. Still, for many years, he was tolerated. More jester than threat. He lived in Asgard, causing trouble, raising laughter, and even marrying Sigyn, a devoted goddess. But Loki's children foretold darker things. With a giantess he fathered 3 terrible beings. Fenrir, the great wolf, destined to shatter bonds. Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent, who grew so vast he circled the world. And Hel, a dark yet beautiful daughter, who ruled the underworld with an iron heart. Loki's pranks grew ever more dangerous. One night, when Freya, the radiant goddess, slept peacefully in her palace, Loki crept through the shadows. Around her neck she wore Brisingamen, a golden necklace symbolizing the fruitfulness of the earth. Loki coveted it, unable to remove it while she lay still. He transformed himself into a tiny flea, crawling beneath her bedclothes. He bit the goddess, causing her to stir. Then, shifting back to his form, he unfastened the necklace and slipped away into the night. But Heimdall had heard. His ears, unmatched among the gods, caught even the soft sound of Loki's change. He followed swiftly, sword in hand, justice in his heart. Loki turned into a blue flame. Heimdall became a cloud and poured rain upon him. Loki turned into a polar bear. Heimdall met him in the same form, clashing fang to fang. Loki then became a seal. But so did Heimdall. They fought, ferocious, relentless, until Heimdall triumphed, reclaiming the necklace and returning it to its rightful place. But not all of Loki's tricks were cruel. Once, a peasant lost a wager to a giant. The price, his only son. Desperate, the peasant and his wife prayed to Odin, the All-Father heard, descending to earth. He transformed the child into a single grain of wheat and hid him among the harvest. The giant never found him. Even chaos has purpose in the hands of the divine. But the giant was wiser than Odin had anticipated. When he found the peasant's home empty, he walked straight to the wheat field. And there, among the golden shafts, he spotted the one stalk that held the boy. He reached out, plucked the grain from its hiding place, and prepared to swallow it whole. But the boy cried out. Odin heard his plea, and descended once more from the heavens. In a flash, he snatched the grain from the giant's palm and restored the boy to human form. "I've done all I can," Odin said gently to the peasants. "No more can be done." And with that, he vanished. The giant roared in fury. "I have been deceived," he bellowed. "I shall return tomorrow to claim my prize." Desperate once more, the peasants prayed again, this time to Honor, the silent god of thought and resolve. He answered, coming to earth. He transformed the boy into a downy feather, and hid him in the breast of a swan, gliding silently across a nearby stream. But the giant was not fooled. He seized the swan by the neck, ready to tear it apart. When the boy cried out once more, Honor returned, restored the child, and told the peasants sorrowfully, "I have done all I can. The rest is beyond me." The giant swore again. "Tomorrow I will return." For the third time, the peasants prayed. This time, to Loki. He came at once, with a wily grin. He carried the boy to the sea, hiding him inside an egg, nested within the roe of a flounder. But as Loki returned, the giant saw him, and knew at once where the child had been hidden. Taking a boat, the giant cast his line, and soon enough, he captured the fish. The egg was drawn out, and the boy's fate seemed sealed. But Loki reappeared in a flash, plucked the egg from the giant's grasp, and restored the boy once again. Furious, Loki attacked the giant, cutting off his leg, and striking him about the head. But the giant, powerful in magic, healed himself instantly, and charged for the peasant's home. Just as he reached the threshold, Loki acted fast. He hacked off the giant's leg once more, and hurled it far away, this time replacing it with a spear of pure metal. For even magic, it is said, cannot pass through iron. And so at last, the giant was defeated. The peasants rejoiced, and praised Loki's cunning. Loki's name was often spoken in Asgard, sometimes with admiration, more often with wariness. On another day, Odin, Loki, and Honor set off wandering, as they often did, to observe the world and its people. As their journey wore on, hunger struck them. They found a field of oxen, chose the finest beast, and prepared a fire. The ox was slaughtered, placed on the spit, and roasted for hours. But when Honor cut into the meat, it was raw. Fresh blood dripped onto the coals. Confused, they built the fire higher. An hour passed. Odin tried again. Still, raw. Then came the sound of wings. Above them, perched in the tree, sat a great eagle. "The meat will not cook," said the eagle, "until I will it so." The gods were stunned. "Then will you let it cook?" Odin asked. "If we grant you a portion?" "I shall," said the eagle. "But I eat first." Within minutes, the ox was perfectly cooked. The eagle swooped down, devoured nearly the entire beast, and soared back to the branches, leaving little behind. Loki was furious. He had never been out-tricked, and this indignity burned within him. Grabbing a flaming log from the fire, he lunged at the eagle. But the eagle dove and caught the end of the log, lifting Loki into the sky. Loki tried to let go, but his hands were bound by magic. He soared higher and higher, screaming and kicking in terror. "I am Thjatsi," boomed the eagle. "I am no bird, but a giant, And I will release you only if you bring me Idun and her golden apples. Those apples kept the gods young, ageless, eternal. Loki trembled, but agreed. Far below, Odin and Honor watched in confusion, never imagining the betrayal Loki was about to unfold. The three gods returned to Asgard, but Loki knew the weight of what he had done. The promise he made to Thjatsi was the darkest he had ever kept. Without Idun and her golden apples, time itself turned against the gods. He paced the gardens, where once Idun's presence had brought the sweetness of spring. Flowers wilted in her absence, and deep in his heart Loki knew the gods would age and die because of him. Yet still, a broken oath would mean worse. So on that fateful morning, he found Idun near a bed of blooming flowers. She greeted him with warmth and joy, her voice like sunlight. The flowers respond to love, she told him. All things grow with praise and care. But Loki interrupted. Idun, he said casually. Odin, Honor, and I found a tree yesterday, bearing apples much like yours. Idun laughed. That's not possible, she replied kindly. My apples do not come from trees. They appear by magic in my basket, one eaten, and another always appears. Still, Loki pressed her. What if something were to happen to your basket? What if Asgard needed another source? At last, with quiet hesitation, Idun agreed to come, bringing her basket, just in case. But the moment she stepped beyond Asgard's walls, Thjatsi descended, in the form of a great eagle. He snatched her in his talons and soared into the sky. With her went the apples of youth. Loki crept back inside, saying nothing. Days passed, and soon the gods' radiant faces dimmed. Wrinkles crept across once youthful cheeks. Their backs stooped. Their laughter faded. Asgard became a land of shadow and sorrow. Then Heimdall spoke. I saw her. With Loki. The gods turned to him in fury. Loki confessed. And Odin's rage shook the heavens. To redeem himself, Loki vowed to bring Idun home. But there was one problem. He could change his shape, yes, but he could not fly. Then he remembered Freya's feathered cloak. She lent it without hesitation. Even the goddess of love had grown old, and without her beauty, the dead no longer came willingly to her realm. Cloaked in hawk feathers, Loki soared into the sky, to Thjatsi's fortress. There, Idun sat quietly in a pen. Thjatsi's daughter Skadi was her keeper, but had wandered off, thinking the goddess posed no threat. Loki landed and whispered, Idun, it's me. He explained the plan. She clutched her basket, and in a shimmer of magic, he transformed her into a hazelnut. He took flight once more, carrying her high above the mountains. But Skadi returned, and in an instant she knew what had happened. She cried out to her father, and Thjatsi gave chase. From Asgard, the gods watched in horror. He will never outfly an eagle, cried Freya. Then we must act, said Tyr. They built a great pile of wood shavings and set it ablaze. As Loki crossed the gates, Tyr held up the fire. The eagle flew into it, and his feathered coat ignited. With a scream, Thjatsi fell to the earth, burning, broken, and gone. Beside him stood Loki, trembling, and in his arms, Idun unharmed. She opened her basket. One by one, the gods each received an apple. Youth returned. Asgard's light bloomed once more. But just as peace returned, a cry came from the wall. It was Skadi. She wept over the ashes of her father, and called for vengeance. But Odin came forward, calm and wise. It was your father who began this. To ease her grief, he offered her a husband from among the gods. She would choose, by looking only at their feet. Each god passed behind a curtain. Skadi picked the cleanest, fairest feet. Certain they belonged to Balder, the most beautiful god. But when the screen was lifted, she saw Angerar, the god of the sea. His feet had been washed daily by the tides. And so, the daughter of the mountains married the god of the waves. Thjatsi's ashes, carried to the stars by Loki in Freya's cloak, became twin flames, burning in the night sky. And there they remain, to this day, the twin stars of Thjatsi, shining in the northern sky. There was no doubt left in their minds. The stranger who had plunged the sword into the great oak was none other than Odin. Each man in the hall rose, eager to be the one to draw it. The king of Gothland, Volsung, and each of his 9 sons tried. But one by one, they failed. At last, only one remained. A fair, quiet youth named Sigmund. As the room fell silent, Sigmund walked forward. He placed his hands upon the hilt, and with a single, effortless pull, the sword slipped from the tree. The gift of Odin was now his. Years passed, and Sigmund grew into the greatest Viking warrior ever known. But in time, his own years drew to a close. Wounded and dying on the battlefield, he called for his beloved wife, Hjordis. She came to him, weeping as she bathed his face. "I have met Odin again," Sigmund whispered. "I knew it was him, because my sword shattered against his mighty spear. He has come to carry me to Valhalla. And, dear one, I am ready." He reached for her trembling hand. "Do not fear, little one," he whispered, "for in your womb you carry my son, and he shall be greater than I, the greatest warrior the world will ever know." And then, Sigmund died. Hjordis later married Alf, the son of the king of Denmark. Alf knew nothing of the child she carried. When the boy was born, he was named Sigurd. Years passed, and in another tale, Odin, Loki, and Honor wandered through Midgard. They came upon a stream filled with salmon, and beside it an otter. Quickly, Loki killed the otter and skinned it, thinking it a prize. But when they arrived at a nearby cabin, they were met with fury. The man who lived there, Hreidmar, cried out, "You have killed my son!" For the otter had been no beast, but a shapeshifter. To atone, Hreidmar demanded a ransom. "Fill this otter skin with gold, and cover every last hair." The gods agreed. They sought out Andvari, a dwarf who guarded a treasure deep beneath a waterfall. Disguised as a fish, Loki caught him and demanded the gold. But in Andvari's palm was a single ring, gleaming faintly. "You must not take this," he warned. "It is cursed. All who possess it shall know ruin." Loki, unmoved, snatched the ring. They returned and filled the pelt. But Hreidmar cried, "I see one whisker left uncovered." Loki, kneeling, offered the ring. "Take it, but beware. It brings only doom." Hreidmar took it, and the curse began. Hreidmar's son, Fafnir, soon murdered his own father and mother, and became a monstrous dragon, guarding the cursed treasure in a cave. His brother Regan, a blacksmith far away, began to covet the hoard as well. He saw promise in young Sigurd, his apprentice, not yet knowing his true parentage. Sigurd trained hard under Regan's eye. One day, Regan spoke. There is a dragon I know. He guards a treasure. Would you test your strength against him? Sigurd, bold and unafraid, agreed. But first, he needed a horse. In the forest, he met an old man, one-eyed and wise. Test the horses in the river, the man said. Only one returned. A silver-gray stallion with eyes of fire and a mighty heart. That is Grani, said the old man. A descendant of Odin's steed. He will never fail you. And with that, the stranger vanished. Sigurd smiled. I'll call you Grani, he whispered. Together, we'll slay a dragon. Back at the forge, Regan built him a sword. Sigurd raised it high and shattered it on the anvil. A second sword, stronger, brighter, also broke. Then Sigurd went to Jordi's and told her everything. My son, she said, you are not Alf's heir. You are the son of Sigmund. And before he died, he left me the pieces of his sword. Reforge it, she said, and let it protect you. Regan did as told. And as the sword came to life and flame, a bright light burst forth. The sword rose on its own. Sigurd grasped it. He brought it down. The anvil split in two. Regan's eyes gleamed with greed. Now they set out together. Two men, one destiny. At the cave, Regan warned. Slay the dragon. But beware his blood. It burns all it touches. Sigurd entered the dark. And just then, the one-eyed stranger returned once more. Sigurd, came the whisper of the one-eyed stranger. Regan has lied to you. Bathe in the dragon's blood, and you will be invincible. Strike from behind, or you will burn. And then, he was gone. Sigurd did as he was told. He crept to the rear of the dragon Fafnir, and drove his sword deep into the beast's spine. The great dragon thrashed, and then fell still. Sigurd stripped off his clothes, cut open the dragon's neck, and bathed in the boiling blood, until it soaked into every part of him, except for a tiny patch between his shoulder blades, where a leaf had rested. He returned to Regan with the treasure. The blacksmith beamed. One favor more, he said. Cut out the dragon's heart. Let me eat it, and carry my brother's strength within me. Sigurd obeyed. As he roasted the heart, a drop of blood fell upon his hand. It burned, and in that pain, he heard voices. But no men stood near. It was the birds, whispering secrets between the branches. He must not trust Regan, they sang. He means to kill him and claim the treasure. Sigurd turned, and there stood Regan, sword raised. With a single stroke, Sigurd beheaded him. Sigurd took the treasure and the cursed ring. Despite the bird's warnings, he slipped into his pocket. As he traveled, a bright castle shimmered in the distance. Riding his steed Grani up and over a wall of white light, he landed within its marble courtyard. Inside, he found a knight in silver armor, lying motionless. Sigurd removed the helmet, and golden hair tumbled out. It was no man at all, but a woman, radiant, divine. Some say she was Brynhild, a Valkyrie and daughter of Odin. Others say she was born from Sigurd's very soul. He slipped the cursed ring upon her finger. Their eyes met, and in that moment, they knew their fates were forever joined. But that is another story. Let us now return to Asgard, to Thor, god of thunder. He lived in Ragnarök, where he built his mighty hall Bilskirnir, the largest ever known, with glowing eyes and a beard of blazing red. Thor was the protector of gods and men. He wielded Mjolnir, the crusher, a hammer forged by the dwarves. capable of calling down lightning and destroying mountains. Thor was also god of agriculture and fertility. His name lives on. Every Thursday, he was married to Sif, whose long golden hair shimmered like ripened corn silk in summer. But one night, Loki saw that hair glistening in the moonlight, and desired it for himself. At midnight he crept into her chamber, cloaked in shadow, with great shears. He cut every strand from her sleeping head. When Sif awoke, her scream echoed through Asgard. Thor's fury shook the heavens. Loki was dragged before the thunder god. Lightning cracked the ground at his feet. "I beg you," Loki cried. "Give me time, I will have her new hair. More radiant than before." Thor gave him 20 hours. Loki fled to the heart of the earth, to the forge of Dvalin, the master smith. He begged for 3 gifts: hair spun of golden thread, a spear that never missed, a ship that could sail any sea or sky. Dvalin worked over the fire, his chance shaping the very fate of the metal. First came Gungnir, Odin's spear, then Sklinir, the folding ship of Freyr, and at last the golden hair, soft as silk, bright as sunlight. As Loki turned to leave, 2 dwarves, Brakr and Sindri, called out, "Why do you grin so, trickster? Our gifts will outshine Dvalin's. We dare you to challenge us." Loki, ever bold, accepted the wager, with his head on the line. And so, the contest of gods and dwarves began. And with it, the forging of Asgard's greatest treasures. But that, too, is a story for another night. Loki began to look uneasy. Brock the dwarf stood firm. "Our gifts," he said, "will hold the magic of the very center of the earth." Loki scoffed, then choked, backed out, but recovered quickly. "Prove it," he snapped. "And if your gifts truly outshine mine, you may have my head." A wager was struck. Brock and Sindri descended into the deepest forge. Sindri would craft. Brock would pump the bellows, relentlessly, no matter the heat. Sindri tossed gold into the fire, then left to summon enchantments. Brock stayed behind, sweat pouring down, pumping without pause, watching from the window. Loki transformed into a gadfly. He darted through the air and landed on Brock's hand, driving his stinger deep. Blood welled instantly. But Brock never stopped. Sindri returned. From the flames he drew forth a boar, its bristles of pure gold, its body radiant with light. It would travel faster than any beast, shining wherever it went. A perfect gift for Frey. Next, Sindri added more gold, and once again left the room. Brock, alone again, pumped on. Loki struck again, this time on Brock's cheek. The dwarf winced, but did not falter. Sindri returned, and from the furnace came a ring, Draupnir, from which 8 new rings would drop, every 9th night, each as powerful as the first. Now Sindri threw iron onto the fire, the final and most important task. As Brock pumped, Loki became desperate. He transformed once more, this time into a horsefly. He landed on Brock's brow, and stung him so hard that blood streamed down into his eyes. Brock raised his hand just for a second. Just one. But that second was enough. When Sindri returned and drew out the final gift, his face fell. It was a mighty hammer, perfect in every way, except its handle was too short. Still, it was no ordinary weapon. This was Mjolnir, the crusher of mountains, the bane of frost giants. A hammer that would always return when thrown. Brock gathered the treasures and returned with Loki to Asgard. Odin received the ring, Frey the boar, and Thor the hammer. Sif, weeping with joy, was given her golden hair. It latched to her head, and grew instantly, longer and brighter than before. Each god marveled at their gift. The gods clapped Brock on the back, and even Loki was praised. Until Brock stepped forward. "My lords," he said, "this trickster wagered his head." The gods fell silent, while Loki's gifts were wondrous. It was Brock's work, especially the hammer, that proved most powerful. Mjolnir, though short in handle, could be hidden in a tunic, and summoned in a heartbeat. Perfect for smashing frost giants. The gods agreed. Brock had won. But when Brock turned to claim his prize, Loki had vanished. He fled Asgard with speed unmatched, but not faster than Thor's fury. "Stop him!" cried Brock. "Fulfill the bargain!" Still smarting from Sif's violation, Thor gave chase, thunder rolling in his wake, and Loki, ever the deceiver, ran for his life. Thor raised his mighty hammer and hurled a lightning bolt, snatching Loki by the ankles and dragging him back to face his fate. When he was delivered into the hands of Brock and Sindri, Thor stood between them. "You may take his head," the thunder god said coldly, "but touch not his neck, for the neck of Loki belongs to me." Brock fumed. For how could one remove a head without touching the neck? Then he had an idea. He summoned his brother's great awl, and with a firm hand, punched holes through Loki's lips. With threads spun from unbreakable sinew, he sewed Loki's mouth shut. For 100 days, Loki could not speak, and when he finally unstitched the cord, his tongue was so raw, he dared not use it for many more. But soon, Thor planned a journey to Jotunheim, and, wary of further treachery, he brought Loki with him, under his watchful eye. They rode in Thor's chariot, drawn by his two great goats, Tooth Gnasher and Tooth Grinder. As dusk fell, they came upon the humble hut of a peasant and his family. Though poor, the family gave all they had. Thor saw there was little food, so he slew his goats, roasted the meat over the hearth, and laid the bones on his cloak. "Place every bone here when you are finished," he instructed. But the peasant, tempted by hunger, cracked one bone to taste the marrow. In the morning Thor waved his hand, and the goats were whole once more. But one limped, its leg lame and twisted. Thor's fury exploded. The sky split as he raised his hammer to destroy them all. But the peasant fell to his knees and confessed. Thor relented, but took the man's children, the strong boy Thjalfi and his sister Roskva. As repayment, they traveled on foot. The lands of the giants were bitter and cold. That night, they found shelter in a strange, massive hall. As they slept, the walls quaked. The earth itself trembled beneath thunderous snores. Thor led them into a side chamber. They huddled, hidden, until dawn. In the morning, they stepped outside, and found, to their amazement, a sleeping giant whose body had been the hall. Even his glove had been the room where they'd huddled. He rose, stretched, and laughed. "So you are the ones who camped in my mitten?" His name was Skrymir, and he was larger than any they had ever seen. Despite his size, he seemed friendly. "Let us travel together," he said. And so they did. Thor, Loki, the children, and the giant. When evening came, Skrymir lay down and handed Thor a sack of food. The knot was impossible to untie. Thor pulled and shouted, but could not open it. Loki tried with his magic. Still nothing. Thor's hunger turned to rage. He lifted his hammer and brought it crashing down on the giant's head. Skrymer stirred. A leaf fell on me. He rolled over. Thor tried again, adding powerful enchantments to his swing. The hammer struck true, embedding in the giant's brow. Skrymer blinked. Perhaps a twig fell this time. A third blow, harder still. Skrymer only scratched his scalp. Maybe an acorn? Thor nearly burst from fury. He had never been so humbled. In the morning, Skrymer rose. I've gone as far as I can with you, he said. Follow the path to Utgard, and meet King Utgard Loki. But beware! The giants within are far larger than me. Thor scoffed. But they continued. By midday, they reached the towering castle. The gods were so small. They slipped between the iron bars of the gate. Inside the grand hall sat Utgard Loki, colossal and grim-faced. He laughed when he saw them. We've heard tales of Thor, he said. But we expected someone larger. Thor bristled. My size is no measure of my might, he growled. I am capable of feats no giant can match. Loki stepped forward. We challenge you, he cried. Test our skills against your own. Utgard Loki grinned. Very well. Let us begin. Loki, ever the quickest tongue, declared. I challenge you to a contest of speed. Find one who can eat faster than I. Utgard Loki clapped his hands. Bring forth Loki. And so began the first trial. The gods of Asgard pitted against the cunning magic of the giants of Jotunheim. Loki, ever confident in contests of appetite, stepped forward for the first challenge. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. His hunger was sharp, his pride even sharper. Utgard Loki nodded and summoned his champion cook. A long table was set, piled high with meat, bones, gravy, and steaming platters. At the sound of the horn, the feast began. Loki devoured his side ravenously, drawing on every ounce of magic and cunning. But when the horn sounded again, he looked up and froze. Not only had the cook finished his half, he had eaten the bones, the platters, and even the table itself. Loki hung his head in shame. Utgard Loki waved a hand. Dismissed, he said. Thor stood. I challenge any man or giant to outdrink me in a single draught. The king smiled. You shall try your hand at this. They brought forth the horn, so long it stretched the length of the hall. Our champion drinks it in 1 or 2 gulps, the king said. Thor placed it to his lips and drank deep. He drank for so long he felt his lungs strain. But when he looked, the level had barely dropped. He tried again, then a third time. Still, the horn remained nearly full. He sat fuming. Salt, he muttered to himself. The peasant's son Thjalfi, loyal and brave, could stand it no longer. I challenge your fastest to a race. The king sent Hugi, his swiftest runner. The first race ended in a draw. The second, Hugi raced to the finish and back, before Thjalfi had even begun. The third race was never run. The king turned to Thor again. Perhaps you'd like to lift my cat? Thor scoffed. A cat? Surely a light feat. He approached the enormous feline, tightened his belt, and pulled with all his strength. Only one paw lifted. The cat batted him playfully, and lay down once more. Thor, red-faced and raging, asked for one final test. There is one in my household who may match you, said the king. My nurse, Ellie. She is 100 years old. The crowd laughed. An old woman shuffled forward. Thor wrestled her with all his might. But she did not move. She stood firm as stone. Thor strained. He shoved. He roared. And then, he fell to one knee. Utgard Loki raised his hand. Enough. Thor looked at him, defeated. I have been humbled, he said. I thought no one stronger than I. But I was wrong. They turned to leave, Loki on one arm, the children beside them. But Utgard Loki called out. You came here today, against my will. This is our home. And your strength is not welcome here. He stepped forward. And in that moment, transformed, he was Skrymir, the very giant they had traveled with, the one who had slept beneath the mountain. Do you remember the blows you struck to my head, Thor? He asked. They never reached me. He opened a curtain. And outside the gods saw deep valleys, cut into the mountainside. These were your hammer strikes, he said solemnly. You hit a mountain I placed between us, invisible to your eyes. Thor gasped. And then, the truth of every challenge was revealed. Loki had eaten not against a man, but against wildfire itself. Thjalfi had raced not a runner, but the king's thoughts. The horn? Its end was dipped into the ocean, and Thor's gulps had lowered the sea itself. Do you see now why the tides move? The king said. The cat was no cat, but the Midgard serpent. So massive it encircles the world. And Ellie, the nurse? She was old age. No man, no god can defeat her. You have all done well, said Skrymir. Better than you know. But you will never remember this place again. You will leave now, and this hall shall vanish from your minds. And with that, Utgard, its king, and all its magic, faded like mist in the morning sun. Thor, Loki, and the children stood alone in the wilderness. The illusions were gone, but the lessons remained. Balder, god of light and innocence, woke one morning with fear in his heart. He had dreamed of death. The vision clung to him, cold and absolute. And though no sword had touched him, he felt as though fate itself had reached for his soul. His twin brother Hr, blind and gentle, tended to him as always. But Balder's mind remained shadowed. He journeyed to Odin, who saw the fear in his son's shining eyes, and knew this dream was no mere vision. Odin climbed to his throne atop Yggdrasil, and called upon the runes of prophecy. From deep in the realms of death, the seeress Valva rose from her grave. Her voice came soft and strange. Balder's brother will be his end. Odin cried out. Who is the guest Hel prepares to receive? From the tomb came only one name. Balder. And then, silence. Odin returned, grim and silent. He told Frigg, Balder's mother, and she acted at once. I will not lose him, she said. And so she set out across all 9 realms. Every creature, every rock, every branch and flame. She secured from them a vow that they would not harm her son. Even weapons bent away from Balder. He became invincible. And soon, it became a game in Asgard. Gods threw spears, shot arrows, hurled stones. All bounced harmlessly off him. Laughter filled the air. But one god did not laugh. Loki, watching quietly, seethed with envy. Night after night he turned over one thought. How can I end the Shining One? Then, he had it. He disguised himself as an old beggar woman, and came to Frigg's hall. She welcomed him, spoke kindly of Balder's safety. Oh yes, she said. Everything in the world has sworn to protect him. Everything except. She paused. A little plant, mistletoe, growing near the oak at Valhalla. It seemed so harmless. Too young for such oaths. Loki's eyes gleamed. He left at once, casting off the disguise as he ran. He plucked the green sprout with its pale white berry, and fashioned an arrow, thin and sharp. Back at Odin's hall, Balder stood, laughing among his kin, as weapons flew like raindrops and fell at his feet. In the shadows stood HR, frowning, silent. I cannot join their games, he whispered. Loki approached him softly. I can help you, he said. He handed HR a bow, delicate and curved. He tied the mistletoe arrow, and gently guided HR's hand. Just aim toward the laughter. HR pulled the string. The arrow flew, cutting cleanly through the air. There was a pause, and then Balder fell. He fell as no god had ever fallen. Silence flooded the hall, and in the silence, grief. The gods rushed to him, but it was too late. Balder, the brightest of them all, was dead. No, Loki whispered, and HR loosed the arrow. It soared through the hall, straight to its mark. There was a sharp gasp. Then silence. HR smiled softly, waiting for the familiar laughter. But it never came. He turned, and saw the circle of gods frozen in horror. At their center, Balder lay dead, his skin pale, his eyes closed, as if he had merely fallen asleep. But the silence said otherwise. Agony swept across Asgard like a black wave. When it was discovered who had loosed the fatal blow, HR was cast out, banished in silence, still unable to speak the name of the one who had guided his hand. Frigg, mother of Balder, wept until the skies wept with her. She turned to her swiftest son, Hermr. Go, she said. Ride to Hel. Beg her to return my child. And so Hermr mounted Odin's great steed, and rode through the 9 worlds of darkness. Meanwhile, in Asgard, Odin and Frigg laid their son upon a great ship. A funeral pyre set to sea. Balder's wife, Nanna, unable to bear the pain, threw herself upon the flames, as the gods placed their dearest treasures at his side. Gifts of power, magic, and memory. The ship sailed outward, and then was gone. For 9 days and nights, Hermr rode, without sleep, without pause. He crossed the gates of Hel, and found Balder seated beside Nanna, serene, at peace, as though nothing had passed. The queen of the underworld stood beside him, watching. Hermr fell to his knees. Please, Queen Hel, he begged. Return him to us. Without Balder, the light of Asgard has gone. She said nothing at first. 3 days passed. Then she spoke. If all things, living and dead, weep for Balder, then he may return. But if even one creature does not mourn, he shall remain with me. Hermr returned, swift as the storm. The gods spread the word across the cosmos. From every land, every realm, tears were shed. Men, gods, beasts, stones, and even the trees wept. For Balder the Beautiful. Water flooded the roots of Yggdrasil. It seemed certain he would return. Until a final messenger, passing through a cold, hidden valley, found an old woman sitting in a shadowed cave. He approached gently. Will you weep for Balder? But her eyes remained dry. The messenger begged, but she did not move. The news returned to Asgard, and Odin himself went to see. He looked into the woman's eyes, And he saw it. Loki. Not in disguise, but unmasked at last. It was he who had guided HR's hand. He who had plucked the mistletoe. He who now refused the last tear that could save the son of light. The sacred code was broken. One of the gods had spilled divine blood upon hallowed ground. And with that, the end began. Ragnarök had drawn its first breath. But first, Loki would be punished, once and for all. The wrath of the gods was so great that Asgard trembled beneath their fury. Odin stood above the worlds, gazing down at Loki, now revealed in the guise of a beggar woman. And at last, he gave the command. Loki fled. He took the shape of a fly and disappeared into the wind, darting far beyond the reach of gods. Or so he thought. He crossed mountains and rivers, until, on the highest peak of the farthest land, he built a house with windows on every side, so no god might approach unseen. By day, he lived in the form of a salmon, sheltering in a deep pool beneath a roaring waterfall. And for a time, he was content. But Odin watched. And when he saw that Loki's vigilance had dulled, he struck. One quiet evening, Loki sat weaving. He had just invented something new. A web of knots and loops. What we now call a fishing net. As he hummed to himself, the gods descended. They were led by Kvasir, wisest among them, the only one cunning enough to outmatch the trickster. Loki saw them too late. He fled through the back door and dove into the water, transforming again into a salmon. The gods entered the cabin. Kvasir examined the net and nodded. "He has made his own trap," he said, and they cast the net into the stream. But Loki was clever. He swam beneath it, too fast to catch. Kvasir, undeterred, had stones tied to the net's base. They tried again. Loki jumped above the net, scales flashing like silver in the dawn. But just as he arced through the air, two great hands closed around him. "Thor, I command you," he roared. "Return to your true form." Loki obeyed, trembling as the hammer of justice hovered above. But Odin stayed Thor's hand. "No," he said. "Death is too small a punishment for this betrayal." They dragged Loki to Niflheim, the icy land of shadows. There Thor built a prison of 3 colossal stones. And the gods brought forth Loki's sons, Vala and Nari. A curse was spoken. Vala became a wolf. And before the gods' horrified eyes, he tore his own brother limb from limb. The gods took Nari's enchanted entrails and bound Loki to the stones. His arms, legs, and body stretched across them, and above him they hung a venomous serpent. Its fangs dripped poison upon his face. He screamed. He writhed. His wife, Seijen, rushed to his side. With trembling hands she held a bowl above his face, to catch each burning drop. But when she turned to empty it, the poison struck him again. His body twisted in agony, and Asgard shook with earthquakes. Loki remained in that place, bound, screaming, until the end of time. And that end was near. It was called Ragnarök, the twilight of the gods. From the moment Balder fell, fate had begun its march. Now, it could not be stopped. The skies grew dim. The sun and moon, Sol and Mani, trembled in their chariots. They knew the wolves were coming. And when the wolves devoured them, darkness fell. Winter came. A winter that lasted 3 full years, followed by 1 brief thaw, and then 3 more. A darkness settled over the earth. Kindness vanished. Men turned on one another. Crime surged like fire. Trust vanished like breath in snow. Then, the stars fell from the sky. The earth convulsed. The roots of Yggdrasil cracked. For NHGGR, the dragon, had gnawed them through. At the base of the world tree, a great groan echoed across the cosmos. Heimdall, guardian of the gods, heard the sound, and he raised his horn. He blew the call that would awaken all beings, divine and damned, to war. Ragnarök had begun. The earth shook. The gods awoke from their slumber. They cast off their finery, donned armor woven from starlight and steel, and mounted their celestial steeds over the shimmering arc of the Bifrost. They rode toward the final battlefield. Vigrid plain. The sea boiled. Storms howled. And deep beneath the waves, the world serpent stirred. With a furious twist, it tore its tail from its jaws, and waves crashed outward, drowning the shores of Midgard. As the serpent slithered onto land, a monstrous tidal wave rose, bearing aloft the ship of the dead. Its planks were crafted from the uncut nails of the dishonored dead, and its black sails whipped in the wind. At its helm stood Loki, his face twisted with triumph, guiding his cursed crew across the howling seas. Behind him surged the fire giants, called forth from Muspelheim. Their leader, Surt, sword blazing with eternal flame. Another ship came from the frost, crewed by ancient enemies, the Jotnar. From the underworld, Hel herself emerged, with her wolf armor and the walking dead at her side. A great crack echoed in the heavens, as Surt and his sons stormed the Bifrost, shattering it with a single blow. The rainbow bridge crashed into the void. Odin, high above, sought wisdom one last time. He returned to Mimir's well, but the head was silent. The runes no longer spoke. He mounted his 8-legged steed and galloped to the battlefield, his heart heavy with the knowledge no fate could now be changed. The armies stood face to face. On one side, the Aesir and Vanir, the gods of Asgard. On the other, giants of fire and frost, the undead, Hel, Loki, and his monstrous children. The skies filled with smoke. The earth seethed with fire. The air stank of rot and destiny. And then, the gods charged. Odin met the wolf Fenrir. He struck, but the beast opened its gaping maw and swallowed him whole. Thor, filled with wrath, turned to face the world serpent, Jormungandr. For hours they fought, blow after blow, hammer against thong. At last the serpent fell, its coils limp upon the field. Thor stepped back, his breath ragged, but the beast exhaled one final breath, a cloud of venom. Thor staggered and died. Heimdall met Loki in single combat. Order against chaos, guardian against traitor. Their blades clashed. Flames erupted. Then, a blinding light, and nothing. Vidar, son of Odin, rushed forward to avenge his father. He drove a shoe, crafted from all the leather ever cut, into Fenrir's jaw, and tore the wolf's head from its spine. Blood pooled beneath him. Still the fire raged. Freyr, mighty and valiant, fell to Surt, his body consumed by flame. The fire god raised his sword and flung it into the sky. The heavens burned. The palaces of Asgard collapsed. Yggdrasil trembled and cracked. The roots were aflame. The branches were shattered. The stars fell. The sea rose. And the world was swallowed in shadow. At last, there was only smoke. and silence. All was as it had been in the beginning. Blackness. Chaos. Nothingness stretching across the void. This, then, was Ragnarök. Not just the end of gods, but the end of light, of time, of memory. But from that darkness, one day, something new would rise.